Paramhansa Yogananda says, belief when it is tried and tested turns into faith. And faith is not a passive thing. A farmer who believes in God and who really has faith in God cannot just sit and pray to God and wait for the crops to grow by itself. He has to toil the land, water the crops, and maintain it. And then he will be able to reap its benefits. Just having faith that the Lord is present everywhere, He is in the crops and He will make it grow, although it is God who does make it grow. Without any work, the farmer cannot reap its benefits. That's another story which usually is shared in the village. Once, for some reason, a group of villagers, they offended Lord Indra. And Lord Indra, who is in charge of rain, decided that, let me see, I will take revenge. You guys offended me, so I will not give you rains for the next 12 years. And Indra also went to Shiva and said that, Shivji, please don't play your damru, because every time you play your damru, only then it rains. So don't play it for the next 12 years. These villagers have offended me. And Shiva said, okay, if Indra you say so, I will listen to you. And there was no rains, there was drought, and farmers were not able to cultivate their crops. But one farmer, although there was no water, he started plowing the field. And he was toiling and he was doing his best. He was even planting those seeds. The other farmers were ridiculing him. They were saying, don't waste your seeds. Indra said, no rains for next 12 years. It's our fate. We offended him. Let's ask for mercy. And they started praying to Indra. But this farmer who was plowing the field said, well, in 12 years' time, I might forget how to plow a field and how to plant a seed. I might as well keep up the practice from day one. And Parvati, she saw this and she said, why don't you play your damru and give that poor farmer some rain? You know, he's toiling hard. Well, Shivji says, well, I was requested by Indra not to play my damru, but he is not even praying to me. He's cultivating, he's plowing the field so that he doesn't forget how to practice agriculture. And Parvati jokingly will say like, well, who knows, in 12 years' time you will forget how to play the damru. Then he will say, let me practice once, and he will practice it and it will rain. So faith means doing the best you can do with firm belief that God will respond to your prayers. And there's another story which is discussed in Ramayana. Doing the best you can do for God is a squirrel picking up pebbles and helping Ram build the Ram Setu so that his army can cross into Lanka. Well, the squirrel was competing with spiritual skyscrapers like Hanuman, who through the power of his devotion was carrying mountains instead of rocks and making the bridge. But the squirrel did not say, well, I don't have as much devotion as Hanuman has. I don't have as much power as Hanuman, as much strength as Hanuman has. But I will do my best. And it carried a pebble. And those pebbles helped to fill in the gaps between those huge boulders. And his service was also recognized. He did the best he can. When I was struggling to establish a meditation practice, the words of Nayaswami Jaya really inspired me. When he was 20 plus years old and when he met Swami Kriyananda, he was also having a similar problem, and he said, Swami, I can't meditate half an hour a day. Then Swami Kriyananda told him, well, then meditate at least for 20 minutes, 15 minutes. And Nayaswami Jaya said, no, that's too hard. 15 minutes, I cannot hold my concentration. And Swami Kriyananda asked him, like, well, what can you do? And he said, 5 minutes. And Swami Kriyananda said, okay, meditate for 5 minutes. And today, there are many, even in this short span at Ananda, from when I did my basic meditation course till today, I've seen many people drop off the path. But Nayaswami Jaya is still on the path. He's spiritual director, and he started off with 5 minutes. He gave his best. He did what he could do the best. And Swami Kriyananda also is another example. He knew that he wanted to start a community, and that's what our Guru wanted. He didn't sit idle and say that I don't have land, I don't have funds. He did what he can do. He started by giving classes, and today, because of his faith and his practice, I'm here speaking with, sharing masters with you all. And doing the best you can is faithfully, or having faith means doing the best you can from your side. And as the Gita reading said, even if you do after doing your best, if you fail, don't worry. Give that failure to God. Hold that failure up to Divine Mother's feet or Guru's feet and offer that failure to Him, and they will happily receive it. And as Swami, as Master said, never call yourself a sinner. We all have this lofty idols for ourselves. I need to be perfect. I need to be joyful. Well, sometimes we are not joyful. Sometimes we are not perfect. But let's not be discouraged. Let's practice the faith. And as the reading said, for every state of consciousness has its own attractive power. If we maintain that consciousness that God is helping us and we will be perfect, we will do the best with what we have, not focusing on the negative qualities, then goodness will attract goodness. And that's how we become perfect. And even if we slip, as Gita said, as Krishna said to Arjuna, let's give him our failures. Thank you.
I wanted to start by sharing a story also. And I want to speak about, in this reading, Swamiji talks about, we hide our, the things that we don't like, the mistakes that we make. So I remembered this story. It's at the expense of my sister. I hope she forgives me. And I should say right off the bat that, she is very studious. So this story should not, affect that in any way. So what happened was, when we were young, one day our maid, who used to come to clean our house, she came and she decided that she wanted, that was the day for deep cleaning the house. So, she started cleaning the house and sweeping and mopping. And when she came to our room, she found that she was sweeping under the bed or behind the bed, and she suddenly discovered all these notebooks. There was 5, 6 of them. And she's like, what are these notebooks? And they look like school notebooks. So she gathered them and she, brought it to my mom. And my mom saw that they belonged to my sister. But the curious part was that all of them were of one subject. So usually in school you have one notebook, you have one textbook, you study from the textbook, you write into your notebook. When that notebook finishes, you get another one. But my mom saw that all of them were one subject. Perhaps it was, I don't know, English or whatever it was. And she saw Gorja Prashar, this class, English, and there were 5 of them. And so she wondered, how can she have 5 notebooks? And that is when the mystery came out, and my sister confessed, out of fear or whatever it was, that what used to happen was she would go to school, and she would perhaps not do her homework, and she would take her notebook there, and the teacher would write a very scary comment in it. And my sister knew, if I come back and I show this to my mom, that will be the death of me. So she would come back home and then sit on her bed and then just shove the notebook behind the bed, and there it was gone. Clean slate, fresh start. Let's get another notebook and get started. So I think this happened several times until my mom obviously found out. But I was thinking, isn't it true that this is how often, we go through life, and especially on the spiritual path also, we make mistakes and we make errors and we are like, my goodness, that I hope God doesn't see, or, we don't want to even recognize it. But I was thinking, why do we hide, and why do we feel that we have to hide things, whatever it might be, deeds, wrong actions? And I realized it is just because there is just one reason for it. It is because we think, again, the basic reason why, we suffer, the ego suffers, is that we think of ourselves as this body. We think of all the things we do, we think of themselves as, that is me, that is my mistake even. And because of that attachment to this is also mine, we cling on to those things. And in fact, we cling on to the darkness, we cling on to mistakes, and we call them our own, as strange as it may sound. Because on one hand, you might be thinking, well, I don't want to have them. But the paradox is that they continue to be with us and they bother us just because we continue to own them. And we continue in our minds to identify that those were my mistakes, Guilt also, I was thinking that, the feeling of guilt, that too really, if you really analyze it, what is it? It is just a very strong feeling. Okay, you made a mistake, but it's a very strong feeling that I did that mistake, and there is a very strong association with that I made that mistake, and you continue feeling bad about it. And so I came up with this theory, this was some time back, wherein I realized that, we are taught that God is the doer, God is always the doer, He does all the actions. And I realized that, well, if one day when I become free, when I become self-realized, I will remember, or I will see that, as they say, God was the doer, God did everything through me in this life and all other lives. So that is one thing. So I was like, if that's going to happen someday, why not just make up my mind and realize it right now? If that has to happen, that memory is going to come someday, why not do it now? And then I thought, it's so strange, we've been tricked into this, because God is the doer, He does everything through us, but He has no karma. He's free, and Master would say that in some of his talks. He said, God is free, He has no karma. I'm like, that's not fair. We get all the karma, even though God is doing everything. We are fooled into thinking we do everything. And I said, I don't want any of it. And in a talk, very sweetly, Yoganandaji says, I fight with God all the time. And I say, I don't want to be fooled. You didn't ask me before creating me, and you've put me in this mess, and now it's your responsibility to take me out. And as devotees, we have to really start living in that way. Good or bad, Yoganandaji used to say, give it all to God, because it does not belong to us. The good, we think that, the good things, yes, we are proud of them, and we feel confident to offer them to God. But the bad things, we say, no, let me first work on them and let me clean it up, and then maybe I'll give it. But really, as yogis, we have to realize that this drama is going to end for us when we have overcome this ego, when we have overcome this slightest thought that we are acting, we are the ones doing things, good or bad. Until that happens, you can do all the good works, but when as long as there is that consciousness that you are doing those things, we will still be bound. I often reflect how when we sleep at night, and I'm sure all of you have had this experience, that when you sleep at night and we dream, sometimes our dreams are, they can be nightmares. And, sometimes the dream nightmares that we see, they are of such a strong quality, they have such a power behind them, that when you're in that dream, you feel that you're acting, you're doing all those things. And it might be a tragedy, it might be something that is not the best thing that you're doing, but you're doing it. But what happens when you wake up? You suddenly found that, my goodness, that was just a dream. Sometimes in the dream, you're so identified with the dream that you forget that this is a dream, And I've often used that to remind myself that, it's just one day, this is exactly what's going to happen. When we wake up in God, we will see it just as a movie that played out, and we'll realize this was just a dream. Right now I'm talking to you, you're listening to me. It's not us that's doing this. And the more we can live in that thought and learn to step back from things, learn to step back from the things we do, we will find freedom more and more as we can learn to do that. That is why Krishna says here, he says that whatever there is in you of darkness, but remember, he says, or light. Whatever there is in you of darkness or light, offer it up to the heights. Accept nothing less in yourself as your lasting reality, which is to say, he's giving us a clue that he is almost telling us that don't cling to anything. Don't identify with anything that you have or anything that you think you've done. Don't identify because it doesn't belong to you. It's like when we are children sometimes and we are with our friends and we take something that we like. It might be a toy, it might be a snack or whatever, but it doesn't belong to us, but it's nice. So we take it and we grab it in our hands and we close our fists, and then we are trying to hide it again. And what happens, our mother perhaps sees us and she says, what are you hiding? And, it's like, nothing, I'm just nothing. And she says, show me your hand. And, with great difficulty, we bring our hands forward and she sees our fingers clasped onto this thing. And she's like, what is it? Open your fingers. And you're like, no. But, she makes us open our fingers. And what does she find inside? There's that nice toy or a good chocolate or whatever it might be. She says, that doesn't belong to you. Give it to me. And it's the same way. God is saying, Krishna is saying through this reading, that nothing belongs to you. Your good treats, your good deeds, bad things also, because he is trying to tell us, I am doing all of these things. And the more we can, every moment and moment to moment, and it takes practice, the more we can remind ourselves, I'm not doing this, I'm not doing this. It's happening through me, it's flowing through me, it's being done through me. But so there is energy passing through which accomplishes things in this world, but never that we are doing those things. So live more in that thought, and the more we can do it, there is so much freedom I've found. I remember sometimes, as we all do, just of this life, and thank God we don't have other lives that we remember. But sometimes when I remember the things that I've done in this life which are foolish or which were quite silly or outright wrong, immediately, now it has become second nature, which I think is a good thing and which we should all do. Immediately I say, oh, you goofed up there, God. You messed up. And that one was really bad. And, just putting it back on him again and again and again, till we drive that thought out of our mind that it is I who had done that, good or bad. And Master said, God likes it. He said, when you put the blame on him, of course, don't try to repeat those things. But why? Because it's that tool through which, when we do that, two things happen when we give everything to God. One, he can enter our consciousness, and the more he can enter our consciousness, because we are giving everything to him, we are referring everything back to him, he can enter our consciousness, and that's really how transformation begins to happen. And really, when he enters our consciousness, we forget our own egoic consciousness, and we can go beyond this maya, beyond this delusion. But the other reason is when we do that, and God enters our consciousness, and his light enters us, that is also when all those dark corners which we still think are our own, when his light comes, those too are dissolved, and we become perfect, and none of those remain also. So let's live in that consciousness, let's practice that in our lives, and let's remember that we are not the doers. God is doing this, it is his show, we are just acting, and because he's free, we are free. And because he's the doer, we have no karma in this. Live in that freedom, and there is a lot of joy in that thought. Joy to you.